Staff Sergeant David Chen had been sleeping peacefully in his wheelchair-accessible bedroom when an electrical fire erupted in his kitchen, rapidly spreading through his specially modified home, where mobility equipment and medical supplies created additional fire hazards that made escape extremely challenging for someone with limited leg function from an IED explosion in Iraq. David's combat injuries meant he couldn't quickly transfer from his bed to his wheelchair or navigate through smoke-filled hallways without assistance, while the fire spread faster than he could move, using only his upper body strength to pull himself toward the distant exit. His neighbors were unaware of the emergency developing inside the quiet suburban home, where a decorated veteran faced the possibility of surviving multiple combat deployments only to die in a house fire, because his war wounds prevented the quick evacuation that able-bodied people took for granted. But Titan, David's specially trained mobility assistance dog, who had been sleeping beside his bed, immediately recognized the life-threatening emergency and activated rescue protocols that his training had prepared him for when veterans with disabilities faced situations that required physical assistance beyond normal service dog duties. For the next 20 minutes, Titan used his size, strength, and specialized training to physically assist David's evacuation through a smoke-filled house, where every second counted and conventional escape methods were impossible for someone whose combat injuries had forever changed his physical capabilities. Welcome to Saved by Tales. Before we dive into this intense story of adaptive heroism meeting housefire emergency, and a service dog's determination to overcome physical limitations that threatened his veteran's survival, join our community of animal hero enthusiasts who understand that some rescues require specialized partnerships, where animals become the legs, arms, and mobility that service-connected disabilities have taken away from those who served our country. Staff Sergeant David Chen had rebuilt his life around wheelchair accessibility and adaptive equipment after losing the use of his legs to an IED explosion during his second tour in Iraq, creating a home environment where he could maintain independence despite his service-connected disabilities. David has done an amazing job adapting to his injuries, his sister Linda Chen often told friends. His house is perfectly set up for wheelchair access, and he's learned to do almost everything independently with the right equipment and modifications. The home modifications included ramps, widened doorways, lowered counters, and specialized bathroom equipment, but fire safety remained a significant concern for veterans with mobility limitations who might need extra time or assistance during emergency evacuations. Titan, a 4-year-old Great Dane, had been specially trained as a mobility assistance dog with capabilities that went beyond standard service dog duties to include physical support and emergency assistance for veterans with significant disabilities. Titan isn't just David's companion, explained VA rehabilitation specialist Dr. Sarah Martinez. He's trained to provide physical assistance that can mean the difference between independence and institutionalization for veterans with severe mobility limitations. The house fire began as a small electrical short in David's kitchen, triggered by aging wiring that had been overloaded by the medical equipment and adaptive devices that his disability required for daily living. "I smelled something burning and heard the smoke alarm," David would later tell investigators. "But by the time I realized it was a real fire, the kitchen was already fully involved and blocking my normal exit route." David's bedroom was located at the far end of the house from the main exit, requiring navigation through hallways that were now filling with smoke from the rapidly spreading electrical fire. The transfer from his bed to his wheelchair normally took David several minutes even under ideal conditions, but smoke inhalation and the stress of emergency evacuation made the process significantly more difficult and time-consuming. Titan immediately recognized the emergency situation and activated training protocols that prepared him to assist David during crisis situations that exceeded normal mobility support requirements. David's attempt to transfer from his bed to his wheelchair was complicated by the smoke that was rapidly filling his bedroom and reducing visibility, while creating breathing difficulties that affected his coordination and strength. "I couldn't see the wheelchair clearly through the smoke," David explained to his rescuers, "and the smoke was making it hard to breathe, so I didn't have my normal strength for the transfer." Titan's response was immediate and professional, using his size and training to provide physical support that helped David complete the transfer from bed to wheelchair despite the challenging conditions. The Great Dane's mobility assistance training included techniques for supporting David's weight during transfers and providing stability that could prevent falls or injuries during emergency situations. Titan knew exactly what to do, David observed. He positioned himself to support me during the transfer, and then immediately began guiding me toward the safest exit route. Titan's navigation through the smoke-filled house demonstrated specialized training that prepared mobility assistance dogs to guide veterans with disabilities through challenging environments where normal navigation methods were compromised. The Great Dane's route selection avoided the kitchen area where the fire was most intense, leading David through alternative pathways that his service dog had memorized during years of learning the house layout. Titan was making decisions about the safest route, David realized as they moved through hallways where smoke was thick enough to disorient even someone familiar with the house design. The mobility assistance dog's training included techniques for supporting wheelchair navigation through challenging terrain and providing physical assistance when normal wheelchair operation became difficult or impossible. Titan's size and strength allowed him to provide pulling assistance when David's wheelchair encountered obstacles or when smoke inhalation began affecting his ability to operate the chair independently. The evacuation route included several doorways and narrow passages where smoke damage and debris created obstacles that David's wheelchair couldn't navigate without assistance. Titan's strength and training allowed him to physically move obstacles and provide pulling power that helped David's wheelchair overcome barriers that would have stopped his evacuation progress. There was a fallen ceiling tile blocking the hallway, David described. Titan moved it out of the way and then helped pull my chair over some debris that I couldn't get through on my own. The Great Dane's assistance included not just guidance but actual physical labor that enabled David's evacuation through areas where wheelchair accessibility had been compromised by fire damage. Titan's determination and endurance remained strong despite smoke exposure that was affecting both dog and veteran during their progress toward the exit that remained their only hope for survival. As smoke concentration increased throughout the house, both David and Titan began experiencing respiratory distress that threatened to prevent their continued progress toward safety. The smoke was getting really thick, David recalled. I was having trouble breathing, and I could see that Titan was struggling too, but he never stopped helping me. Titan's training included techniques for low-profile movement that could help him avoid the worst smoke concentrations while continuing to provide mobility assistance to David. The Great Dane's protective instincts led him to position his body to shield David from the worst smoke exposure while maintaining the physical support needed for continued wheelchair operation. Titan was trying to breathe cleaner air near the floor while still supporting my wheelchair, David observed. He was taking care of both of us during the evacuation. The last section of their evacuation route required crossing the living room area where fire had spread from the kitchen, creating the most dangerous conditions of their entire escape journey. Titan's training and determination were tested to their limits as he provided maximum physical assistance to help David's wheelchair navigate through areas where heat and smoke created life-threatening conditions. I don't think I could have made it through that last room without Titan pulling the chair, David admitted. The heat was intense and I was getting weak from the smoke. The Great Dane's strength and protective positioning created the momentum needed to complete their evacuation before fire conditions became unsurvivable for either veteran or service dog. Titan's final assistance included helping David navigate the threshold from house to outside safety, completing an evacuation that had required every aspect of his specialized training. David and Titan's emergence from the burning house was met by neighbors and emergency responders who had arrived to find the home fully involved in fire with concerns about potential victims trapped inside. "Thank God you made it out," called neighbor Jennifer Walsh as she saw David and Titan escaping through the smoke. "We were afraid someone might be trapped in there." Both David and Titan required immediate medical attention for smoke inhalation, but their conditions were stable and showed no signs of serious respiratory damage from their exposure during the extended evacuation. "Titan saved my life," David told paramedics as they provided oxygen therapy for both him and his service dog. "Without his help I never could have gotten out of there in time." The house was completely destroyed by the fire, but the successful evacuation of both veteran and service dog was considered miraculous given the challenges posed by David's mobility limitations. Both David and Titan received treatment for smoke inhalation at the emergency room, where medical personnel were amazed by the successful evacuation despite the significant challenges posed by David's disabilities. David's evacuation through that house fire was remarkable, observed emergency physician Dr. Robert Kim. His service dog provided physical assistance that made the difference between escape and potential tragedy. Titan's condition was evaluated by emergency veterinarians who found that his smoke exposure was significant but not life-threatening, thanks to his training in protective breathing techniques during emergency operations. Titan's conditioning and training helped him function effectively in conditions that would have overwhelmed most dogs. Noted veterinarian Dr. Amanda Foster, his service dog preparation saved both their lives. The medical evaluation confirmed that David's smoke exposure had been minimized by Titan's protective positioning and efficient evacuation assistance during their escape from the burning house. David's family rallied around him following the house fire, providing immediate support while understanding that his service dog had prevented what could have been a fatal outcome for a veteran with mobility limitations. "Titan is David's hero," said Sister Linda Chen. "That dog used his training and strength to physically help David escape when his disabilities would have made evacuation impossible without assistance." The fire experience strengthened appreciation for the life-saving value of properly trained mobility assistance dogs who could provide physical support that went beyond companionship to actual rescue assistance. David's gratitude toward Titan was overwhelming and permanent, understanding that his service dog had literally carried him to safety when his combat injuries created obstacles that could have been fatal. David's house fire led to immediate support from veteran organizations and community groups who helped provide temporary housing and began planning for construction of a new wheelchair-accessible home with enhanced fire safety features. "David served our country and deserves our support," said Veterans Service Organization Coordinator Mark Rodriguez. "Titan's rescue shows us the importance of ensuring that disabled veterans have both service dogs and safe housing that accommodate their needs." The new housing plans incorporated lessons learned from the fire, including enhanced evacuation routes and fire suppression systems designed for residents with mobility limitations. Titan's house fire rescue became a landmark case for mobility assistance dog training programs, demonstrating capabilities that exceeded standard service dog duties to include actual physical rescue assistance. Titan's rescue represents the highest level of mobility assistance dog training, explained service dog specialist Dr. Jennifer Walsh. His ability to provide physical evacuation assistance saved David's life when conventional accessibility failed during emergency conditions. The rescue was featured in service dog training curricula and disability advocacy programs that highlighted the life-saving potential of specialized animal partnerships for veterans with significant disabilities. David and Titan's experience contributed to enhanced training protocols for mobility assistance dogs, incorporating fire safety and emergency evacuation techniques that could help other disabled veterans survive crisis situations. Titan's performance during David's house fire shows us what's possible when service dogs receive comprehensive training for emergency situations, noted trainer Dr. Sarah Kim. His rescue techniques are now part of our standard curriculum. The case also influenced building codes and accessibility standards for veteran housing, ensuring that future constructions would incorporate both normal accessibility and emergency evacuation considerations. 3 years after Titan's house fire rescue, David and his Great Dane continued their partnership in a new wheelchair-accessible home designed with enhanced safety features and improved evacuation options. "Titan gave me my life back by saving it that night," David reflected. He proved that service dogs can be the difference between surviving and thriving for veterans whose disabilities create challenges that most people never consider. Their story continued to inspire disability advocacy and service dog programs, demonstrating that some partnerships go beyond assistance to become literal lifelines when emergencies threaten those whose service-connected injuries require ongoing support to maintain independence and safety. Titan had proven that some heroes come with 4 legs, specialized training,
and the strength to carry veterans to safety when their own bodies can't overcome the obstacles that emergencies create for those whose combat service left them with permanent reminders of their sacrifice. I still think about that night when a decorated veteran lay trapped in a burning house where his combat injuries made normal evacuation impossible. While electrical fire consumed his specially modified home, and smoke-filled rooms where mobility equipment became obstacles instead of tools for independence. If Titan had been just a companion instead of a trained rescue specialist, if he'd lacked the size and strength to physically assist David's evacuation, if he'd been anything less than a professional who understood that some veterans need their service dogs to become their legs when disability and emergency combine to create impossible situations, David Chen would have died in a house fire because the same IED explosion that took his mobility also took away his ability to escape when fire threatened his life. Titan's story teaches us something profound about the specialized partnerships that exist between disabled veterans and service dogs, whose training goes beyond companionship to become literal life support when emergencies threaten those whose service-connected injuries require ongoing assistance to navigate a world designed for the able-bodied.